Dear students, let us today study about on superstitions by A.G. Gardiner, which is prescribed for the BCA syllabus English. In the essay on superstitions by A.G. Gardiner, we have the theme of fear, control, superstition, logic, tradition, insecurity, and escape. Taken from his Alpha of the Plough second series collection, the reader realizes after reading the essay that Gardiner may be exploring the theme of fear. Man has a fear of the unknown, and to alleviate this fear, he creates superstitions which may or may not calm his mind. He is always fearful that some bad thing will happen in my life. So he has created the superstition. The walking of an individual around a ladder in the street rather than underneath the ladder is one of these fears or superstitions. The reality is that it is highly unlikely for someone to be injured by walking underneath the ladder. However, people prefer to walk around it. It is possible that Gardiner is suggesting that many superstitions or fears are illogical. Take the number 13 for example. Many people consider it to be bad omen. Yet there is no reason for it to be. It is after all just another number. As Gardiner himself knows by traveling on the bus, if anything, man appears to wish to escape through superstition rather than risk facing a reality he may or may not be sure of. It is not practical, as Gardiner suggests, to hold up the House of Commons due to thunder, a case that occurred during Cato's election in Rome. In reality, it is an individual's unwillingness to challenge their fear that gives rise to the continuation of superstitions in modern times. Also, on many occasions, people do not know why they are superstitious. It is something that has always been there or taught to them by their elders, who also may not know why it is unlucky to walk underneath a ladder. Tradition plays a large part in superstitions, and it is by word of mouth that superstitions are prevalent in society today. Nobody has a reasonable explanation for most superstitions apart from the fact that by not adhering to a superstition, an individual gets uncomfortable. Rather than deal with the discomfort or fear, an individual decides instead to pay observance to the superstition. It may also be a case that the individual who adheres to superstition is in fact insecure within themselves, knowing that should they not follow the superstition, something wrong might occur. This in itself is illogical as man does not have the power to determine whether a number 13 bus is unlucky. Adherence to superstitions can also cause problems for people. They will not only become afraid but also become irrational. Say, for example, a man does not wish to travel on the number 13 bus. His only option is to find another bus, most likely at a different bus stop too, which will safely carry him home. By doing so, the individual is allowing this for superstition to take control of his life, yet he may not be prepared to admit to it. It is one thing being superstitious, but telling another person is a different matter as they may view the individual as being foolish or old fashioned in their beliefs. Particularly when the individual can provide no evidence as to why they are superstitious. It is better for a person to live their life free of superstition. Life will be less cumbersome and annoying should a person do so. There is no advantage to living one's life superstitious, and if anything, it will only create more problems for an individual. It is easier to dismiss superstition and to be more scientific in approach, something that those who came before were unable to do. It is for this reason that Gardiner may be suggesting that an individual, due to the advancement in science, has no reason to be superstitious. The number 13 is just another number. The sound of thunder is just that, a sound of thunder does not dictate the course of an election. In modern times, man has to be more sensible in his approach to superstition. To be logical, when he can cast aside by any fear by he may have based on information from his elders, who, as mentioned, may not necessarily know why one should be superstitious. Life will be easier for the individual who carries on with their life without hindering themselves with the nonsensical superstitions that society teaches us. A man who enjoys life free of superstition will be happier than the man who believes in superstition. He will walk under a ladder without thinking. Choose the number 13 bus should it be purposeful to him and disregard any signs in whether that superstition dictates is a bad omen. If anything, life is simpler for the man who can think of himself without allowing for superstition to overcrowd him. A free mind is a powerful mind and one that will not allow itself to be hindered by superstition. Write a note on the prose style of A.G. Gardiner. Let us discuss some of the questions and answers. A.G. Gardiner was an English journalist, editor, and author who lived from 1865 to 1946. He wrote many essays under the pen name Alpha of the Plough, which are known for their charm, humor, and insight. He was also a social reformer who campaigned for a minimum wage and better working conditions for the poor. He edited the Daily News from 1902 to 1919 and contributed to several other newspapers and magazines. He wrote biographies of eminent personalities such as George Cadbury, Sir William Harcourt, and David Lloyd George. He is regarded as one of the most lovable and delightful writers of the periodical essays. Simile, characteristic of the essay. Used simile language and avoided unnecessary jargon or complexity. He expressed his thoughts clearly and directly without any ambiguity or confusion. He made his essays accessible and enjoyable for a wide range of readers. Clear. He had a clear purpose and focus in his essays. He did not disgrace from his main theme or topic. He organized his ideas logically and coherently using appropriate transition and examples. He supported his arguments with facts and evidence without being dogmatic or biased. Lucid. He had a lucid style and tone in his essays, used vivid imagery and metaphors to illustrate his points. He appealed to the senses and emotions of his readers as well as their intellect, used humor and irony to lighten his tone and make his essays more engaging. Flexible. He was flexible and adaptable in his choice of subjects and approaches. He wrote on a variety of topics ranging from social issues to personal experiences. He adopted different perspectives and angles to explore his themes. He experimented with different forms and genres of essays such as narrative, descriptive, reflective, persuasive, etc. Influences journalism. He was a journalist by profession and edited several newspapers. He developed his style and artistic powers during his journalistic career. He wrote on current affairs, social issues, and eminent personalities with clarity, accuracy, and insight. Humanism. He was a humanist who believed in the dignity and worth of every human being. He wrote with sympathy and compassion for the common people. He advocated for social justice, human rights, and democracy. He opposed war, violence, and oppression. Liberalism. He was liberal who supported progressive reforms and changes in society. He championed the cause of freedom, equality, and tolerance. He criticizes superstitions, prejudices, and dogmas. He valued reason, logic, and evidence over blind faith. He uses humor to make his essays more entertaining and appealing. He often made fun of himself and his own habits or weaknesses. He also uses witty remarks, anecdotes, and exaggerations to amuse his readers. Examples: he describes his attempts to quit smoking as a comedy of errors. He uses irony to express his opinions or criticisms in a subtle and indirect way. He often said the opposite of what he meant or implied a contrast between what is expected and what happens. He also used sarcasm and ridicule to expose the follies and vices of others. Example, he mocks the superstitions of people who believe in lucky charms or omens. Conclusion. In conclusion, A.G. Gardiner was a remarkable essayist who wrote on various topics with elegance, grace, and humor. He was influenced by his journalism, humanism, and liberalism. He used techniques such as humor, irony, and satire to make his essays more engaging and persuasive. He was a master of the periodical essay who taught the basic truths of life in an essay, easy and amusing manner. On superstitions, A.G. Gardiner complete explanation. Let us study about introduction. On superstitions by A.G. Gardiner is taken from his 1931 collection of essays called The Alpha of the Plough. Second series, Alpha of the Plough being A.G. Gardiner's pseudonym. The essay launches a frontal attack on superstitions that prevail in all societies and in all ages. Using his lucid reasoning and sense of satire, Gardiner convinces the readers about the gullibility of the human beings who willingly fall prey to irrational restrictions on one's behavior. To make the essay sound appallingly funny, Gardiner becomes the narrator himself. Original paragraph 1 of the essay, and we will study about the original paragraph written by him, and we will explain it further. It was inevitable that the fact that a murder has taken place at a house with the number 13 in a street, the letter of whose name number 13 would not pass unnoticed. If we took the last 100 murders that have committed, I suppose we should find that as many have taken place number 6 or number 7 or any other number you choose as at number 13, that the law of averages is as inexorable here as elsewhere. But this consideration does not prevent the world remarking on the fact when number 13 has its turn. So, what it tells that something, if a murder takes place in the house that is number 13, it is superstitious view that the number was 13, the house number was 13, so such unpleasant incident occurred. But it is true that murder also has taken place in house number 6, 7, or so on. And when the number turn of the number 13 comes, we become apprehensive and become victim to superstitious ideas. A.G. Gardiner understood the folly and gullibility of a human mind really well. Despite the advancement of science and a dramatic shift towards seeing over everything through a prism of rationality and experimental proof, the propensity to cling on to age-old prejudices have continued to blight the human ability to look at events and phenomena dispassionately. Gardiner has chosen the case of murder that happened in a house bearing the number 13. People around ascribe the grisly crime to the unlucky number 13, conveniently ignoring the fact that many murders did place in houses with the other numbers too. The link between the number 13 and the murder thus does not stand a statistical scrutiny. The stigma around 13 has refused to go away. The second paragraph. Not that the world believes there is anything in the superstition. It is quite sure it is a mere childish folly, of course. Few of us would refuse to take a house because its number was 13 or decline an invitation to dinner because there were to be 13 at table. But most of us would be just a shade happier if that desirable residence were numbered 11 and not any less pleased with the dinner if one of the guests contracted a chill that kept him away. We would not confess this little weakness to each other. We might even refuse to admit to ourselves, but it is there. Explanation. We all concede that the number 13 does not bode ill for anything that bears it, be it bus seat or a house or a airline counter. Yet when it comes to accept the product or the service marked 13, we set a back. An unknown voice from a deep corner of our brain says no. We need it, aware that we are falling prey to prejudice. A house bearing the number 11 strangely appears more livable than the one with 13. A dinner party with 13 guests triggers negative thoughts, making us wonder if we should attend it or not. Quite curiously, if an invitee excuses themselves reducing the guest number to 12, we sense that the meeting would be joyful. If someone says we are barely meekly ceding to irrationality in shying away from anything number 13, we refute the accusation vehemently. Original paragraph 3. That he exists is evident from many irrefutable signs. There are numerous streets in London, and I dare say in other towns too, in which there is no house number 13. And I am told that it is very rare that a bed in hospital bears that number. The superstition, threadbare though it has worn, it is still sufficiently real to enter into the calculations of a discreet landlord in regard to the letting qualities of his house, and into calculations of a hospital as to the curative properties of a bed. Its explanation. In the subconscious of mind, most of us, the fear of 13 remains entrenched. Anyone in authority to allot serial numbers to goods, properties, or services skips 13 and jumps to 14 after 12, willfully ignoring mathematics rule. This is why almost in all towns and cities we seldom find a street bearing the number 13. No hospital bed where people fight off illness will be number 13. No matter how cozy a house is or how efficient the doctors are, a tenant or a patient will shy away from a house or a bed number 13. Such is the aura of gloom and doom around the number 13. Original paragraph 4. In the latter case, general agreement would support the concession to the superstition idle, though that superstition is physical recovery is a matter of the mind as well as of the body. And the slightest shadow on the mind may, in a condition of low vitality, retard and even defeat recovery. Florence Nightingale's almost passionate advocacy of flowers in the sick bedroom was based on the necessity of the creation of a certain state of mind in the patient. There are a few more curious revelations in that moving record by M. Duhamel of medical experiences during the war. Then the case of the man who died of pimple on his nose. He had been hideously mutilated in battle and was brought into hospital a sheer wreck, but he was slowly patched up and seemed to have been saved when a pimple appeared on his nose. It was nothing in itself, but it was enough to produce a mental state that checked the flickering return of light. It assumed a fantastic importance in the mind of the patient who, having survived the heavy blows of fate, died of something less than a pin prick. It is not difficult to understand that so fragile a hold of life might yield to the sudden discovery that you were lying in number 13 bed. Explanation. When a patient battles some serious illness, they need, apart from high quality medical care, a steady physical and mental state. A patient with a strong positive outlook and a hope that they would not succumb to their illness is more likely to recover than a weakling who feels they are in the end of their tether. Unfortunately, stray cases of patients well on their road to recovery have intriguingly taken a U-turn to die have happened. Such unexplained deterioration was explained away by attributing the death to the bed number, which was 13. In one such instance, a soldier grievously injured in the battlefield received medical care and showed dramatic recovery. Just when the doctor felt the gallant soldier had thought of death, his condition worsened after a pimple erupted on his nose. This innocuous development certainly can't pull a patient into the jaws of death, but it did. The medical staff, clueless about the mishap, ascribed it to the inauspicious bed number 13 that the patient occupied. This simple single incident that was possibly a coincidence cemented the notion that 13 is indeed an unlucky number that invites trouble. Ambience around a patient's bed does affect his recovery. A pleasant surrounding aids the recovery by lifting their mood. This is the reason why Florence Nightingale insisted on keeping bouquet of fresh flowers at patients' bedsides. Paragraph number 5. I am not sure that I could go into witness box and swear that I am wholly immune to these idle superstitions myself. It is true that of all the buses in London, that number 13 chances to be the one that I constantly use, and I don't remember until now ever to have associated the superstition with it. And certainly I have never had anything but the most civic treatment from it. It is well behaved a bus and as free from unpleasant associations as any on the road. I would not change it number if I had the power to do so. But there are other circumstances of which I should find it less easy to clear myself of suspicion under cross examination. Explanation. The author regularly travels in a particular city bus and has had very pleasant experience traveling in it. The passengers, the conductor, and the interior were all his liking. Curiously, the bus was number 13 on it, so it is absurd to link the number 13 with bad luck or any sort of danger. Original paragraph number 6. I never see a ladder against a hose side without feeling that it is advisable to walk around it rather under it. I say to myself that this is not homage to a foolish superstition, but a duty to my family. One must think of one's family. The fellow at the top of the ladder may drop anything. He may even drop himself. He may have had too much drink. He may be a victim of epileptic fits, and epileptic fits, as everyone knows, come on at the most unseasonable times and places. It is a mere measure of ordinary safety to walk around the ladder, normally justified in inviting danger in order to flaunt his superiority to an idle fancy. Moreover, probably that fancy has its roots in the common sense fact that a man on ladder does occasionally drop things. No doubt many of our superstitions have this commonplace and sensible origins. I imagine, for example, that the Jewish objection to pork as unclean on religious grounds is only for to the fact that Eastern climates it is unclean on physical grounds. Explanation. People on encountering a ladder on their way generally avoid walking under it and instinctively walk around it. Such instinct is made part of our psyche by people around us who aver that walking under a ladder must be avoided as it could invite big trouble. The author reflects on his widely held belief and delves into it to see if there is any rationale behind it. He understands that people at work on the higher rungs of a ladder often involuntarily drop items that could hurt those who happen to at the spot at that very moment. It's always possible that the worker on the ladder is struck by a bout of fits and crashes onto the ground. Quite obviously, one can preempt such dangers by walking around a ladder and not under it. So, we see some rationality behind this apparent superstition. The Jewish abhorrence towards pork is due to the fact that the animals are dirty because they eat dirt. We can figure out that in many geographies, people in the East, pigs eat human waste. It's reasonable, therefore, to assume that in animals meat is unfit for human consumption. Here again, we see some reason behind a superstitious belief. Paragraph, original paragraph number 7. All the same, I suspect that when I walk around the ladder, I am rather glad that I have such respectable and unassailable reasons for doing so. Even if conscious of the suspicion and ashamed to admit it to myself, I walk under the ladder. I am not quite sure that I have not done so as I kind of negative concessions to the superstition. I have challenged it rather than being unconscious of it. There are only one way of dodging the absurd dilemma, and that is to walk through the ladder. This is not easy. Explanation: a person walking around a ladder can draw comfort from the fact that he is aware of the physical risk involved in walking under a ladder. If the person dares to walk under a ladder voluntarily, he would be presumed to have challenged the soundness of the superstitious belief. He would believe that he was unaware of the prevailing bar on walking under a ladder due to customary beliefs. If someone wants to be seen as a person who pays no heed to superstitious beliefs, he can walk through the ladder, but that would be impractical and absurd. Original paragraph 8. In the same way, I am sensible of a certain satisfaction when I see the new moon in the open rather than through glass, and over my right shoulder rather than my left. I would not be for any consideration arrange these things conspicuously, but if they happen so, I fancy I am better pleased than if they don't. And on these occasions, I have even caught my hand, which chanced to be in my at that time. Turning over money a little surreptitiously, I thought, but still undeniably turning it. Hands have habits of their own, and no one can't always be watching them. Paragraph number 9. But the shadowy reminiscences of antique credulity, which we discover in ourselves, play no part in the lives of any of us. They belong to a cradle outward. Superstition was disinherited when science revealed the laws of the universe and put man in his place. It was no discredit to be superstitious when all the functions of nature were unexplored, and man seemed the playing of beneficent or sinister forces that he could neither control nor understand, but which held him in the hollow of their hand. He related everything that happened in nature to his own inexplicable existence, saw his fate in the clouds, his happiness or misery announced in the flight or birds, and referred every phenomenon of life to the soothsayers and oracles. Original paragraph 8. You may read in Thucydides of battles being postponed and lost because some of women that had a relation to the event than the failing of the leaf was against it. When Pompey was afraid that Romans would elect Cato as a praetor, he shouted to the assembly that he heard thunder and got the whole election postponed. For Romans would never transact business after it had thundered. Alexander surrounded himself with fortune tellers and took counsel with them as modern rulers takes counsel with his ministers. Even so great a man as Caesar and so modern and enlightened a man as Cicero left their fate to the augurs and omens. Sometimes the omen were right and sometimes they were wrong. But whether right or wrong, they were equally meaningless. Cicero lost his life by trusting to the wisdom of truth. When he was in flight with Antony and Caesar, Augustus, he put to sea and might have escaped. But some crows chanced to circle around his vessel and told the circumstances to be unfavorable to his action, returned to the shore and was murdered. Even the farmer of ancient Greece consulted the omens and the oracles, where farmers today is only careful of his manures. Should I, original paragraph 11, I should have liked to have seen Caesar and I should have liked to have heard Cicero. But on the balance, I think we who inherit this latter day and who can just at the shadows that were so real to them have the better end of that. It is pleasant to be about when the light is abroad. We don't know much more of the power that turns the handle of this idol so than our forefathers did. But at least we have escaped the grotesque shadows that envelop them. We don't look for divine guidance in the entrails of animals or flights of crows, and the House of Commons does not adjourn at a clap of thunder. The use of satire. He used satire to attack the social evils and injustice of his time. He exposed the hypocrisy, corruption, and selfishness of the powerful and influential people. He also challenged the outdated customs, traditions, and beliefs that hindered the progress of society. Example, he denounces the warmongers and profiteers who exploit the sufferings of the masses.